Hey everybody, welcome to my channel, The Magical Solution. My name is Leilani. We are here today with our book club, continuing forward with our Andrew Jackson Davis, early 19th century, late 18th century spiritualist, medium, and philosophizer, if you will. And we are continuing forward with his book, The Harmonial Philosophy. So let us get into it. I'm going to share screen. For those of you guys who are watching on TikTok or Instagram, I encourage you to head on over to YouTube so that you can actually share screen with me. And for some weird reason, it's not letting me. Hold on one moment. Let me see what's going on here. There we go. Share screen. Beautiful. So now, let's do this. Beautiful. And let's do that. All right, let me know. Let me know if you guys see the screen. I want to be able to let you guys see all of that. Hello, hello. Okay. All right, let's get to it. Let's get to it. We are on chapter 5, and it is the demonstration of the Summerland. Woo. The subject of research is embodied in the following affirmation. There is an uninhabitable zone or a circular belt of refined and stratified matter in the heavens, here denominated as the Summerland. As to the possibility, it is not going beyond the sphere of facts, verified by telescope observation, to suppose. To suppose the organization of such a zone in the heavens. Its probability as a material reality will dawn first upon that mind which understands the causative principles within the belt building manifestations of cosmical matter. Astronomers, for example, astronomers testify to the existence of immense zones of matter, and that these zones not only continue unbroken for countless ages, but revolve like the planets, each on its own center or mathematical axis. This scientific testimony lays a foundation for confidence in the existence of an inner universe of exceeding beauty and glory. Now, although at present neither intellectually nor telescopically seen, it seems to me that the honest mind cannot but give due weight to facts and principles of a more interior nature, of which planetary formations and revolutions are merely the physical manifestations. It becomes the true philosopher to turn from the phenomenal realm and from visible facts to an examination of causes and principles behind them, and thereafter to ponder well the far reaching and fruitful lessons which they impart. All that we know depends on the connection of things with one another, and it is only by contemplating creation as a whole that we can attain true conceptions of its parts. Okay. So tell me how you feel about that. How do you feel about this? Because again, we're talking about, late 1800s, early 1900s. We're talking about a not very well educated man, and he is essentially discussing that this Summerland, or this place within the cosmic landscape. And when we talk about cosmic landscape, we're talking about both internal and external things, because in this cosmology there's really no difference between internal external. There's incarnated spirit and there's discarnated spirit. These are not, but it's all spirit, if that makes sense. And so in this essential, principle, what we see reflected outwards, such as in astronomy and in the cosmos with the planets and the universes alike, we are seeing a mirror image of that within ourselves. And so essentially, all beauty that can be manifested, all beauty that we can initially observe and understand, is therefore an unfolding and a revelation of the internal beauties that we are allowing to come forth. We're allowing to manifest, if that makes sense. Okay. Um, so essentially we hold cosmos within ourselves, which is interesting. Okay. There are two most important discoveries in science: the persistence and indestructibility of force, and the interpolarity and universal convertibility of force. The first is termed the conservation, and the second is the correlation of force, teaching the divine lesson that all forces, as well as all forms in the universe, are immortal brothers and sisters. And from these splendid discoveries, we obtain a stellar key to the Summerland. So, again, this idea of the Summerland is essentially where we go when we die, right? Because we talked about in the last chapter, he was like essentially giving us the biological or metaphysical understanding of when we die, what happens, and where we go. Now he's going to get more deeper into its physical location. And I hate to use that word physical location, because he himself is not even trying to say that it's a physical location, but he's going to do his best within our own understanding of science, within our own understanding of the cosmos. He's going to do his best to explain how this all is supposed to roll out. So let's keep it moving. So force is a substantial and real matter and real as matter itself. Nay, more, the materialism of matter melts away in the spiritualism of intelligent principles. Our next step is into the realm whence forces emanate, into the sacred presence of intelligence, will, and spirit. These are convertible into electrical, chemical, magnetic, and finally into mechanical force. Okay, so do you see where we're getting at here? You see how he is sort of bridging that gap, right? For spirit is a substance and everything is rooted therein. So the unified field, this unified understanding, this like one plane of existence, if you will, or this one consciousness, if you will, um, we're going to say that's spirit, and everything is comprised of that. And therefore, it is a substance that can both be felt, observed, emotionally understood, and intelligently understood. Okay? And can possibly be measured when the time comes for our technology to, get to that point, right? Let's keep going. So, according to modern science, heat, light, electricity, and magnetism are different modes of motion. That is to say, expressions of force, right? So, it should be led in this manner to discover that the universe is essentially dual, and that manifestations of energy are modes of an eternal substance which is negatively matter and positively mind, themselves forms or conditions of one central reality. So, boom, here's his explanation of how, even though this unified field of spirit, right, although this has its own divine natural order, when that natural order begins to disseminate into manifestations such as will, and intelligence and all that, and then eventually comes into the material world such as chemical, electrical, magnetic, etc., and mechanical. Once it comes down and funnels down into the physical matter, we immediately see that unified spirit field become a dualistic situation. It funnels down to the material where it then separates into two. Does that make sense? Now, with this dualism, please understand he is not yet posing these things as expressions that are against each other. As of right now, these are forces, these are expressions of forces in motion, which is the material world, because everything that is alive, everything that is manifest has to stay in motion. When things stop moving, things die, right? And so, or things are considered not living, right? Not material. So, when we are talking about these expressions of motion, we are talking about two co creative forces that require each other for momentum to occur in a dualistic structure that is ultimately the unified field of spirit. Are you with me? Are you with me? All right, cool. Let's keep it moving. So, our philosophy is therefore that the universe is twofold unity, or two eternal manifestations of two substances which at the heart are one, but twain in the realms of cause and effect. In the absence of better words, we term these matter and mind, interchangeable, convertible, essentially identical, eternally harmonious, and wedded by the polarities of positive and negative forces. That last sentence is so fucking beautiful and poetic. So please just read that again, Leilani. I will read that again for you. In the absence of better words, we term matter and mind interchangeable, convertible, essentially identical, eternally harmonious, and wedded by the polarities of positive and negative forces. Right? I don't think I need to say much more. All right, let's keep it moving. So, the link or bond which unites the positive side or mind to the negative side or matter is found in essence. But in finer analysis, it is more correct to term mind and matter spirit having two forms of manifestation. Matter is thus relieved from the idea of grossness, while mind is reclaimed from its long exile in the solitudes of unapproachable immaturity. Immaturity. Immateriality. But you know what? Immaturity works in that sentence too. Let's be real. Let's be real. It works in that sentence. I wasn't entirely off. But yeah, immateriality. So yeah, so essentially, when he's talking about this essence of mind and matter and their relationship with each other, up to this point, when we have seen them, when we have discussed their nature, it has always been in terms of opposition, right? So the material world, the space of flesh, it is dirty, it is disgusting, it is sexual and vile, it is grotesque, it is this, it is that, right? Like it is something that you need to escape from, right? It's this spiral of that just sucks you in, right? And we see mind as this like, unapproachable place, this like place of light and wisdom and purity and goodness and spiritual, and it's just like it's something that's so far that we have to reach and climb and attain, and it becomes something that keeps us in a perpetual state of failure because we will never be good enough, we will always be fallen, we will always be sinful, there will always be something, the goalpost will always move in the when it comes to the material world. And so what we are doing here in this particular paragraph is essentially reconciling that relationship and giving them both their grace, right? We are not looking at matter as something gross anymore. It's relieved from that. Matter is an expression of spirit in its negative force energy, okay? And mind no longer can be something that is by itself somewhere far off, but instead comes back into the game as something much more approachable, something much more attainable, and therefore create a much more harmonious relationship. And that's really important to get that duality thing out of your head. Yes, it's duality, but duality does not mean opposition. We need to get that out of our head, okay? These are roles that these energies are playing for the sake of us, okay? There will be established in this manner a harmony of relationship between exterior and interior universes, the polarity of all forms and forces in nature, the descent of spirit to earth and the ascent of earth to spirit, the eternity and unity of both hemispheres of the unifier column, and to ascertain the certainty of that zone called the Summerland, we must follow nature's pathway from causes to effects. Here is her unalterable code that visible forms are effects which flow from corresponding invisible causes. A man's body is the effect of an interior, vivifying, organizing, sustaining spiritual individuality. Woo! Bitch! Bitch, did you hear that? Did you hear that? So here's where I come in as the logical, rational person that says, okay, all this spiritual stuff is beautiful, but the minute you cross that space of, you know, and I'm not saying he's doing that, but what I'm saying is this is where a lot of new agers, a lot of toxic positivists, and a lot of people who take ancient knowledge or take instruction like this and take it to the extreme. And the extreme that I'm talking about is when he talks about the fact that everything visible to us and that everything that happens to our bodies is as a result of our internal shit. This can easily go into you don't need medicine, you don't need to go to the doctor, you don't need to do, you just need to have positive thinking, you just need to exercise, you just need to eat vegetarian, you just need to do that, and it becomes a whole thing. That's not what the fuck he's saying. So please, if that's the first place your head goes when we talk about this, you need to do some deconstructing, okay? So when we're talking about this, we're talking about this unified spiritual field that then comes into material where it separates into the dualistic forces. These dualistic forces are both an internal and external situation. They are a mirror reflection of each other. We observe duality play its course in our physical reality, just as we see duality play its course within ourselves. And how we connect to that, how we interrelate with that, is essentially how our realities and our bodies will have an effect from that cause, will have a result coming out of those interactions, okay? And so it's important not to just generalize and put everything in one container and saying all illnesses of the body are completely spiritual and you can just meditate real hard and your cancer will go away, to the reality of the situation, which is yes, positive thoughts will help. Yes, praying, candle work, all that stuff will help. But ultimately, your reaction with the world is you have to engage in nature's pathways. And nature's pathways brings you medicine, brings you healthcare, brings you all these things that man has evolved to do and the sciences have caught up to do in accordance with nature. So that must be an avenue that you must take as well. Okay, please. Like that is like the biggest, if I say nothing else, that is my biggest disclaimer as someone who works in the spiritual field and have seen people go through hell and back with like legal stuff. Um don't speak in this way. Don't speak in this way. Even if you believe that shit, even if it's fucking true, don't speak that shit out loud because it will get you in hot water. In hot, hot water. Okay? Okay. So let's talk about it. Let's break it down a little bit further. It elaborated his brain, his heart, his senses, all parts of his physical temple, though each is modified more or less by parental and circumstantial influences, both before and after birth. Applying this principle to the organization of the stellar universe, what endowed matter with the universal tendency to form globes and roll out into immense zones, stratify as revolving belts, and move in circular paths through immensity, there is but one answer. The spiritual universe is composed of globes, zones, belts, which move harmoniously in circles of causation through vaster and more interior heavens. Men look through telescopes to discern the outermost garments of hidden spheres of light, and there is just as much certainty that the summerland exists as that our mind exists. Sorry. The eternal law of cause and effect is that on which both depend. Men's body, man's body is the demonstration of an interior antecedent corresponding formative individuality, and the solar system is the demonstration of an interior antecedent corresponding formative spiritual universe. The Earth's distance from the spiritual sphere alters according to its position in the annual journey around the sun. Sometimes the space is only about 50 millions of miles across. At others, when Earth is near the opposite end of the ellipse, it is nearly 4 times more distant. The tide of this celestial river sometimes flows fast as light, in certain localities faster. Yet, the shortest time occupied in 1 hour and 25 minutes in a bodily journey from Earth to the nearest shore. To more remote localities, the distance is sometimes nearly 200 million miles. Now, it is a fact that we rarely obtain direct intelligence from persons who lived in the most ancient ages of human history, while even many modern philosophers, since their death, have given no evidence of continued existence. The inconceivable intervening distance is one of the favorite journeys taken by some of the brightest minds which have lived on earth. It is accomplished by both land and stream, and also by atmosphere excursions. Remember, however, the estimated distance between the Pleiades and our solar system? The 500 years occupied in the traveling of light between the cluster and our human eyes? What then is the length of time required by missionaries and teachers to make a single journey through some distant mansions of the Father's infinite temple? If it be asked whether a spirit requires space in which to exist and time to make its transit from place to place, the answer is yes and absolutely. The inconceivable rapidity of thought itself involves time, and this has been measured correctly. But a spirit is not a thought, it is a personal, bodily, substantial existence. Like every other body, space is indispensable to its presence, and time is required for its movement. This being so, and as eternity is an impossible conception unless it is divided into times, while infinity can be approached only through separation into spaces, the eternal progression of man means and can mean only an endless succession of periods through which his mind makes pilgrimages. This is insane. So, before I move on, let's kind of break that down a little bit. So, up to this point, we were talking about the internal, external, you know, mirroring of how our spirit interacts with nature and how nature interacts with spirit and vice versa, right? Now, up to this point, although nature and spirit are essentially the same thing, because we are in the physical, we do have to treat them differently. That is the whole point of dualism. There is natural law and then there is spiritual divine law, not because they are different, but because in this dualistic world, they need to be approached differently. They have a different biological makeup in this space, okay? They serve different functions in this space, right? So when you take that information and bring it to a disembodied spirit, which is like the dead, okay, mediums, because let's not forget, we're talking about mediumship here, we're talking about spiritualism here, but we're really breaking down more so of the cosmology and all that stuff right now. But anyway, what he's talking about is that when we're talking about a spirit now who might live in these other planets or these other galaxies or these other spaces within the universe, he is saying that because it is material, because we now can observe it and know that it abides by natural law, then so too must the disembodied spirits in these spaces. Because just like we are made of substance and matter, disembodied spirits are made of substance and matter. It's just a different kind of substance and matter that we haven't either understood, measured, or whatever yet. But there is a substance, there is a matter to this. And let's not forget, this was written during the time of mesmerism. This was written during a time where people were experimenting with mediumship a little bit, like in closed doors. People were experimenting with what do you call it, the plasma state and the materialization of spirit, et cetera, right? So like all of this is also feeding into sort of that framework, okay? But essentially they are saying here that spirits, according to spiritualism of Andrew Jackson Davis, spirits are bound to time and space. So, if you want to speak to a spirit from Saturn, you will have to wait to get that communication. They need to get to you in their way. Now, because of their material, they might have a faster way of getting to us. Like it might take us, 2 light years to get to a certain planet, but to them it might take 20 minutes. Like in our time, it might take them 20 minutes, right? So we're not denying that the interaction between us and spirit seems to be very quick from our perception. It seems to be very, very quick. We don't have to try very hard to interact with spirits, a couple of prayers, or if you're like into like dancing, or if you're into drumming, or if you're whatever your culture or tradition does in order to bring spirit in, it's usually not like a huge worst case scenario. It's a couple of days, maybe a week of like hardcore stuff. But for us, it would take light years. If a spirit from another planet was calling us to them, it would take light years. You know what I'm saying? So, like, because that's what our physical makeup and that is what our biology, how it interacts. Let's go back. How this interacts with natural phenomenon and spirit phenomenon, right? But ultimately, this is where we see the split between the spiritualism of the early 1900s, late 1800s into the spiritism of the mid to late 1900s. And that is that in the early spiritualism, spirit was bound by time and space, and in the later spiritism, Spirit is not bound by time and space. And the argument is this. The argument, again, when we get to spiritualism, they are saying that spirits are made out of a substance, and that substance, because it can be observed in the material natural world, must abide by natural law, and therefore is bound by such things as time and space and motion. In spiritism sees spirit, yes, as a material, as a biological substance, but that biological substance is not bound by natural law, it is bound by divine law, and so therefore their interactability with us is as quick as a thought, and is as eternal and timeless as a thought, and so therefore time and space is not bound does not bound a spirit. So these are the two main thoughts, but at least now you're kind of seeing where it's coming from, right? Let's keep it going. So it retains that identity by remembering the essences of past experiences apart from their details. So in this manner, it keeps the universe new forever, its own spiritual appetites healthy, and its aspirations eternally youthful. The human mind has aphelions and perihelions like the sun. It travels to extremes of its orbit in one great sphere and then retraces its steps to the center and then starts planet like on another journey through the boundless fields of unfathomable universalum. It follows that no human mind can comprehend what there is to see, meet, feel, hear, know, and even in the next or second sphere, beyond which, so far as yet to known, no person born on earth has ever advanced. So, those of you who are joining me for the first time, or those of you who don't know what he's referring to here, in this particular sentence, he's referring to the previous chapters. Hey, blessings, Eric. um he's referring to the previous chapter where he was talking about the different spheres. Remember the seven the seven, what are they called, music of the spheres, the seven planets, the ascension to the sun, right? So when we die, our cycle of reincarnation, right? When we die and move into the next sphere, and then there's a set of 3 stages that we have to go through in each sphere. And as we die and come back and die and come back and die and come back, these 3 sort of qualifications that we pass through in each sphere then allows us to go to the next sphere. So there's 7 altogether, 7 being where the sun is, right? So here, that's what he's talking about here. He's saying, look, everything that's in the first sphere, hello spiritual artists, everything that's in the first sphere, which is us, right? Us, Earth, everything in the known universe, and everything yet to be discovered in the known universe falls in the first sphere. Okay. And so we abide by the first sphere's laws, the natural laws of the first spheres, and we have to use nature as a co co-conspirator, if you will, in our progression. Okay, we have to, nature and us need to swing back and forth with moving the progression, the needle of progression, so that we can then ascend to the second sphere, and so on and so forth. And we abide by the rules of the second sphere and use that to ascend. And then we go to the third sphere, blah, 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 right? Until we get to our highest elevated space. So right now we're on like the first rung of the ladder, and this is what they're talking about here. Hola, Bonday. Hola. Okay. And so that's what he's saying. So up to this point, the second sphere hasn't even been observed yet. Like we don't even know what the fuck that's all about yet, right? But the love, will, and wisdom of the Summerland are in sympathetic correspondence with the great positive center of the infinite whole. So, again, the Summerland, according to Andrew Jackson Davis, spiritualism of the late 1800s, early 1900s, the Summerland is what we today would call the unified field, the spirit field, okay? And the Summerland has its spheres of influence, spheres of reincarnation that allow you to kind of spiral upwards towards progression and evolution towards God. And they're saying here that even though we're not given all the information and we're going on only what we know within this first sphere, what is something that we can take respite in is the fact that all the spheres that lead up to the unification with God, they all have a sympathetic correspondence. There's a mirror that shines through all of them that allows you to see into all of them. There is a reflection of each sphere in the sphere before and in the sphere after. Okay, so these are what we call divine inspirations. These are what we call downloads. These are what we call the prophets. These are what we call all the things where you get a little sort of inkling of what to do next and how to progress next. And these are very far and few in between, and if we're lucky they might get written down and recorded in history and then and passed down, but for the most part we are constantly losing and having to relearn this information every couple of 100 years or so. And it's pretty wild. It's pretty wild. There is the focus of essential principles at which all may seek information when prepared inwardly. Okay, it is a focus of mental progression and spiritual truth, which must be sought by love and absorbed by wisdom. Did we all hear that shit? Did we hear that? I'm going to say it again. It is the focus of mental progression and spiritual truth which must be sought by love and absorbed by wisdom. To this spiritual sun I go for information, and by contact with it, while in the superior condition, I receive impressions. So the spiritual sun being the center, right? The sun, this the God, the unified field, whatever. We go there when we meditate, when we engage in mystic practices, in ritual practices, in ceremony, in service. When we engage in these actions with love and with an open mind to receive all wisdom as a learning opportunity, all action as a learning opportunity, then in those moments we are conditioning ourselves. We call it the superior condition. These are how we condition ourselves to receive downloads and to become prophets and to become elevated. Bendiciones, kitty. Okay, so this is what we're talking about here. We have to focus our mental, we have to be rooted in spiritual truth. Our actions must be sought and must be done through love, and the lessons of our actions and of our mental and spiritual progression must be absorbed through our wisdom. Period, point blank. All right? So, the discovery of the relationship between material and spiritual universes, founded on immutable laws, cannot but astonish the boldest poetic imagination and excite the opposition of those who rely for positive knowledge upon the testimony of their five senses. The discovery of gravitation was not a thousandth part as important as the disclosure of an inhabited belt of solid spiritualized matter in the heavens, adopted to the new bodies of those who withdraw from this planet through the process called death. The revelation of the shining belt has arrived by degrees, coming through hazy glimmerings of intuition from remotest of ages, contemplated by analogical reasoners, and demonstrated to spiritualists by messages distinct and positive, telling of a home in the solemn abyss of space, and seen by clairvoyants who have described the throning hosts which people that substantial sphere in the bosom of the heavens. Okay, so here he's just simply, touting that it has been spoken by prophets, by other mediums, by clairvoyants. It has been seen by visionaries and things like that. to be a physical place, the Summerland, the place that we go when we die, the sphere of spiritual substance that is composed of the dead bodies of spirits. So in this particular case, again, it's sort of the end. It's the end of the line, if you will, and this is where the central sun is. This is the unified field. Okay, it is composed of our spirit because it is us, we are it, and all the spheres and all the things that exist are also it. It all is it. But when we get to that final destination, it has been seen by mediums, by clairvoyants, by prophets, by visionaries that it is very much uh, a space of immense beauty, joy, love, etc. But that was in the previous chapter. I'm not going to rehash all that. Let's see. There we go. So the relationship and sympathy between the orbs of immensity, between this world and that of risen humanity, are recognized by intuition and reason. Looking far into the ages past, I find conceptions of realities pertaining to a higher sphere of human existence. The intuition of past generations, like the reason of those now living, offers no conflicting testimony on the possibility of an inhabitable sphere in space now called the Summerland. Scientific astronomy has expanded men's minds with respect to the magnitude and splendors of the universe, but it is my impression that the resolution of nebulae into millions of suns is but a glance within the vestibule of the eternal temple. The measureless systems which roll in their harmonial circles shine upon landscapes more beautiful and into eyes more divine than ours. Yeah, so he's talking about like a literal heaven, right? Okay. So that was the end of that chapter. But essentially, yeah, he was talking about how this literal heaven is comprised of us. We are comprised of it. It is beautiful. It is perfect. It is amazing. And that, you know, we may not be able to see it with our telescopes, although we have, again, little inklings, little mirrors, right? Because everything is a reflection of the sphere ahead of it and behind it, right? We have these little inklings, such as the Milky Way, or when we see other galaxies and we see them spiraling in space and we see sort of like that cloud, all of those are little sort of, I don't know what you would call them, little just droplets of what the splendor is to be expected in these higher realms, in these more elevated spaces. All things that are beautiful here, you can only imagine them being 10 times more beautiful, but you can't because you just can't. It's unimaginable, and that's kind of the whole point, right? So we are in the last 10 minutes and we are now able to open the floor up to questions. Hi, Abby. We do all need one another, girl. We do. Um, so now the floor is open to questions, and I'm sorry if I look crazy. It's pretty cold up here today. I'm a little I'm a little nasally from the cold, and I had my gig last night, a lot of singing, a lot of dancing around, so I'm tired. Is he speaking of the astral realm? No. So the astral realms, the dream realms, all the various spirit realms that we refer to are all spaces that, as of right now, they are either already part of this sphere number one, because they exist in an observable space and we can interact with them here in the first realm, or they are realms within the other spheres, the other seven spheres leading up to the unification with God. So when you're talking about higher level spirits and the realms that they are from, we may be talking about a different sphere altogether, or we may be talking about simply a different universe or a different plane of existence within this first sphere that we all occupy. Okay. Either way, it's not heaven. It's not quote unquote the Summerland. according to this cosmology. But great question. I can see that. I can see where we would go with that. Absolutely. Absolutely. What else? What else? What do we got? That was a good question. That was really good. Hello, hello. Ay, qué frío. Ay, I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't like it. I mean, I do. I do. I prefer cold than hot because you can't take off your skin. You know what I mean? Like, you can only take so many cold showers. You can only walk around naked for so long. Like, after a while, hot is hot and I don't like it. But cold, oh, I love it. You can always bundle. You can always, I love it. Right? All right. Well, then, if there are no questions, I want to say thank you so much for hanging out with me tonight. Absolutely. Make sure you like, comment, share, subscribe, do all the things you need to do to, let people know who I am. If you haven't already been to my website to see what I'm all about, I would highly suggest you do, right? www.themagicalsolution.com. Sign up to my newsletter to get free, stuff, free downloads, guided meditations, blogs, coupons, all kinds of stuff. Um, just an announcement, we are at the beginning of February, and the deadline for my classes, my spiritual development intensive classes, and the deadline for my mentorship program are coming up. So head over to the website, read the instructions on what you need to do, how you need to apply, etc., and sign yourself up. These classes are wonderful. And I'm not going to be like, ooh, seats are limited and ooh, there's only a few spots left. I'm not trying to be, it's Zoom. I can have like 100 people. So like get in on it. Come on. And yeah, I believe the deadline is the 20th. I believe. I got to look back on my calendar. But get on it if you haven't already taken the classes. Okay. What else? What else? Anything else? No? All right, guys. You have a beautiful, beautiful night. Thank you for hanging out with me. My name is Leilani. This is the Magical Solution, and this is how we grow. Have a good night, everyone.